Hey there, boys and girls of the YouTube world. Join along as the Duff Dog and I get my chopped 1949 Ford LS swapped F1 running for the first time in 10 years. LS swaps are the best! Come on, baby. There's nothing more permanent than temporary LS swap wiring. There's a lot of water and goo in here. I'm pretty sure that that is all seat cushion that's in my radiator in there. Woo! What happened? Today we're gonna get after a long-awaited project. It's that time of the year. We're gonna put some torque thrusts on the front of Reggie. We switched it up a little bit. We put an 8-inch rear end in that thing late last year. We're gonna get that back on the road. We're gonna put a high stall torque converter in the LS swapped 69 Camaro and get that on the road. But this is what we're gonna work on this week, I think. The 1949 Ford chop top LS powered overdriven 9-inch rear Dodge Dakota subframe F1 that's been sitting in the corner of this place since we moved in 3 years ago. And that's right, it's been a year and a half since we've touched it last. We got it running. It sat so long that the injectors were full of ethanol or dirt or who knows what, so we did a lot of figuring out to get that. But anyway, the brakes are about done. The steering is about done. It needs exhaust. We now have an exhaust bender. And needs a little wiring cleanup. I don't know, gas pedal installed. A few other odds and ends. So let's clear open a space, pick a few things up, see if we can't get this thing shoved on the lift and get her over there and throw a battery in and see if it'll fire up again. What a mess. This is what happens when you got a project that sits around for too long. It gets full of parts from other projects, like that thing. Well, these bat wing or gull wing or potato wing or dark wing, whatever you want to call them hoods, look really cool. They're super awkward to handle. And then you got to figure out where you're going to put it. How safe does that seem? Not very. That's the key to this multiple project madness, is just shuffling stuff around. Just shove it wherever it fits. Oh. Don't ask me why the seats are not in the car where they belong. Well, the rest of this looks like it's for this pickup. Since we worked on it last, I bought some brand new running boards. That'll be 2 years this July since we bought those at the Iowa swap meet. Looks like we got a new wire harness. Maybe some new rear brake shoes. I remember that being an issue because it's a weird rear end 67 1-year only F100 or some crap. And then just a bunch of random other stuff. The other problem we have with this thing is a drive-by-wire LS, which we've done the Cowboy Cadillac. Oh, not another fire. Anyway, we've done other LS swaps, and so when those LS swaps don't work or we're trying to troubleshoot them, we steal parts off of this. So who knows what parts we may have stolen over the last 2 years while we're trying to get other stuff running. All right, continue cleaning. There we go. We finally got a little room to breathe. If you got a dog, you know the problem with something sitting around for 3 years. That's a lot of dog hair. Anyway, now I think we gotta try to wrestle it through here and we'll get her on the lift. Probably better move that camera out of the way. You ready to push this thing or what? What? Oh. We gotta push? Push it real good. Do the dance.
I don't know the dance.
Damn it. Do the safety dance.
You can dance if you want to. You can leave your friends behind.
Yeah, right. It worked. Wow. No, not yet. Okay. We're just gonna have you sweep that, and then we're gonna push it right back to where it was. Spring cleaning would be. Rumspringer. Woo! So we moved this thing out of the way and we washed it all up for a little birthday bash for Chin's 30th birthday party. Turns out that was 2.5 years ago. So It's all coming back to me what we got to do now. Well, it's not, but I did take some notes. So let's rip into this thing. Let me show you what we got going on. Starting at the front, we got a new aluminum radiator. I got radiator hoses in there. They're not flexi, but they don't have clamps on it. Well, singular, upper. And for the lower, we got to put a thermostat housing on there. So I got some with adjustable necks that we'll have to fish in there. We also don't have any exhaust manifolds. We must have stole those for another project, so we'll have to find those. The air intake is taped up, so that's nice, but we're gonna have to find all that, or make it. The ECU got stolen and put into that, which you could win, so we gotta get that ECU reflashed so that we can put in this pickup. And never mind the wiring mess, obviously we gotta clean that up. I'd like to get a better harness for this thing one of these days, but this is just a stock harness that's been modified. It's gonna be good enough for now. It'll probably never get fixed and just be on here forever. Let's be honest. I do remember getting the steering all hooked up and the shift linkage, but we do need to mount the base of the steering column to the firewall yet. So I got a couple spare ECUs here, an ECU bracket. Those things are terrible to mount, so we're gonna try this Bevinci. I don't know what it is. We'll give it a whirl. Amazon special. I got a couple different thermostat housings. They are indexable and they're chrome, so they're gonna leak. Well, that one is, but maybe the black one won't. Let's be honest, it will as well. Got some thermostats. Here's the stock one that's not pointing the right direction. There's our swivel mount for the base of the column. We got to mount the gas pedal and our drive-by-wire control box. There's our brand new Chinese cast iron headers. I got some new Felpro bolts to mount them because I didn't like the Chinese ones that came with it. One set even came with some down pipes, some new oxygen sensors to put in said down pipes, a random box of miscellaneous air intake stuff. And I remember having issues with the rear brakes, so look at this mess. Apparently I got 3 sets of brake shoes. I don't know if I ever got the right ones. Got some original drums that I'm guessing we turned. Oh yeah, and they were re-drilled for 4.5 from 5 on 5.5, because that's what the half-ton Ford pickup would have been. Then we got some wheel cylinders and some brake hoses, and then we got a fuel pump and a filter that we got to do some plumbing yet. And I'd also like to get those running boards on there so they're out of the way, and it really cleans this thing up a bit. And then we got to check all the steering hardware and the brake hardware and the lug nut hardware and all that stuff. So first things first, we got a pile of brake boxes back there. So let's get the rear brake stuff on it. So here's what we kind of threw in the towel back here. These are 2¼ inch brake shoes, which it called out for 68 to 72, I think. 67 only was 1¾ inch. I didn't know what year this rear end was, so I just bought what I thought was right and put it on there. Anyway, the pins that retain the shoes aren't long enough, and that spring is super compressed, so we couldn't get everything together. So the other option would be to put 2¼ brakes on it, but then we got to re-drill it to 4.5 bolt pattern. Luckily the Bobsey twins gave me these, but they're the wrong bolt pattern. They're for the 2¼ and then I would have to get the right 2¼ hardware kit, which this is for 1¾ inch. So I found the right shoes. The old Z283R from Wagner. So I'm going to take this all apart and we're going to put those 1¾ inch shoes on there and we should be good to go. The other reason that I'm not changing over to the 2¼ because obviously that's a lot more braking power is I don't know that these backing plates will accept the 2¼ shoes. So I don't want to convert everything over. Let's just stick with what we got, put the right shoes on there, box those ones back up and be on our merry way. All right, that was fun. Got one side together. It's always nice when you leave the other side together. It was a long time ago when we took these apart, but I don't like these brakes at all. Not drum brakes in general, but if you love drum brakes, go check out our boys over at, and girls, over at Junkyard Digs. Kevin and Angus over there, they got the I Heart drum brakes shirts, and I think they got decals as well, so shout out to those guys. I've never met Kevin, but we go back and forth on the Instagram. Seems like a pretty nice guy. We're going to try to meet up with him one of these days, but anyway, let me show you what's wrong with these brakes. So I took everything apart and put it all back together. The only difference is, other than some new parts, that the quality isn't where it needs to be, but that's to be expected. But I noticed that when I took these apart, you can see that this shoe was running on the inside of the drum. You see that little lip over there on the right? It wasn't running on all the drum. And sure enough, I stuck my light in back here, and same deal on this one. And instead of grabbing more used parts and trying to make this work, I'm gonna have to call up the boys and girls at Quick Performance, also in Iowa, I believe. Maybe they're in Minnesota. They're in Iowa. probably. And they sell loaded backing plates, so it's got the shoes, the master cylinder, the wheel cylinder, all that good stuff. And then have the drums already drilled and throw it all on there, and then I'll get wider brakes and they will actually run on the drum. I'm guessing somebody put different drums on here. I don't like the way these drums look. I feel like in '67 they didn't have all these ribs, so I'm guessing somebody's got like older drums on here. Anyway, I wonder if that's what it is. They took the drums off of the F1 and put on this F100. I don't know. It'll be fine, but long term, we need to get rid of that. And I do like drum brakes. As a matter of fact, I love drum brakes. They don't squeak, so I am not putting discs on the back of this thing. What a pain. All right, one more side to do, and we're good to go. Always leave one side together so you got something to reference. Rear brakes are done. We got to bleed all of the brakes yet, but we got the hose in, the lines ran, new wheel cylinders, we got the drums turned, all of that stuff. Now, next on the list is the transmission cooler lines. I just got them looped right now, apparently, because when we fired it up, I was wondering, I got a brand new 4L60 in here, and I thought, how did I fire that up without smoking the pump in the transmission? But apparently, I'd already bent up transmission cooler lines, and I looped them, and now I remember why they weren't hooked up to our fancy aluminum LS F1 radiator. You can see I got some nice new lines bent up, fished around the engine there, and then I get up here by the rack and pinion, and they're just kind of looped with a hose. And there's one bung on the radiator, and that's for a flared connection, and there's that big ugly guy, and that's for NPT. Now I remember what happened. I went to go hook those up and pulled the threads out of the radiator, so we had to weld that bung on there. I had to take it to my buddy who's got a welding shop. Shout out to Chad's Welding in Moorhead. If you're looking to have some stairs made, Chad can hook you up. He's a hand railing and stair guy. That's mostly what he does, but he likes to TIG weld some aluminum once in a while. So other than waiting for that, I was waiting for these fittings, so I got a 3/8 NPT to inverted flare here, and then I got our inverted flare to inverted flare. So I'm gonna flare some ends with our hydraulic flaring tool here, and hopefully get a transmission cooler hooked up. Obviously I got to put those adapter fittings into the radiator and then get everything all bent up into the shape, and then we'll cut them to length, flare them, a bada bing, a bada boom. It's going to be real good. Of course, that took longer than it should, like everything else we do around here. Let me show you how we did it and what we did and why it went so wrong. Everything went really well on the passenger side here. I failed to remember that there's a crankshaft pulley there that turns, and I bent that line through that, and I didn't have enough line, so I bent up a new section, and then we had to put a union in here. So anyway, it's pretty good. I have been trying out running a zip tie over and then one in between, and then clamped it together so that they can't rub against each other, and it holds them firmly. So hopefully that works out there. Like I said, don't love the union, but it's better than what it was. And I really hate rubber transmission lines, so should be pretty good to go. So check transmission cooler lines off the to-do list. Getting closer. So I got into sandwiches last night, and I was out here till 1 o'clock in the morning after everybody left, because it seems like that's when I get the most done, when I don't have people chirping at me or asking me what to do, or just things that we do together off film, like wiring up a building, or trenching wire in, or squaring up walls on a building. Carpentry seems like we got a lot going on lately in electrical work. But anyway, I got the radiator situation pretty much wrapped up, and I got the exhaust on. Let me show you. So there we got our manifolds bolted on. We got all of our plug wires hooked up. I use those brand new Felpro bolts. I like using good bolts because these are prone to snapping off at the front and the back of the manifolds anyway. So that's all done. It's a snug fit by that steering, but we got plenty of room. I've made her just right. I'm gonna have to tie those wires off because they're rubbing on the steering shaft, but that's easy enough to fix. Here I got some nice 5/16 vacuum tubing for our overflow. I've got clamps on the radiator hoses. The top and bottom radiator hose is just a stock GM radiator hose upper that I cut down and made fit. Looks like it's a part number, can I read it upside down? 9069. This radiator is for an LS application. So it's got the steam port vent, so I got that hooked up. That's just a stock GM formed hose. And the other half of that 9069 I cut and used for a low radiator hose with our indexable thermostat housing that no doubt is going to leak, but I'm prepared for that. Also got our heater hoses looped down there. So yeah, we're ready for coolant and ATF. made a fair amount of progress last night. All right, let's take a look at what we got going on the bottom side with this exhaust. These are 2.5-inch exhaust pipes. I just use their standard Bosch oxygen sensors, and I threw some of my favorite MagnaFlows on here because they seem like they sound good. I think we're just gonna put them right here for now just to fire it up, but I don't like the way that it really lays out, so I think we're gonna put a chunk of pipe in there and put our mufflers back here. Unfortunately, our brake bracket gets in the way on the driver's side, so we can't even put a muffler on there. I like these band style clamps, especially just for mock-up. They're a little bit more expensive, but they get a lot better seal, and they're a lot more removable and user-friendly. So there's what we got going on over here. There's the oxygen sensor. All kinds of room on that side. I don't like where they put them because it's right in the way of getting at the hardware to loosen them up. I don't know why they couldn't clock it a little bit differently. And I've got bungs for those. We can move them. This one on the passenger side is just right in the way of the exhaust stud. But there's plenty of clearance for the pipe, so we can move the bung if we got to. And those turn downs or Y pipe, whatever you call it, came with one of the exhaust kits that I got, a set of manifolds. I don't think it came with this set of manifolds, but anyway, a pretty decent piece. They actually fit up the way I like them to. I haven't decided if I want to go dual exhaust all the way out the back with 2.5, or if I want to Y this together and then go to like 3-inch all the way out the back, or just keep it 2.5. I don't know. I'm kind of a single exhaust guy, but I don't know if I'm confident enough in my exhaust building capabilities to build a single exhaust. The hard part is getting it to Y together. I don't know how we do that. I don't know how to cope exhaust tubing just yet, but one way to learn, I guess. Well, I guess we're gonna drain the gas next. Try and hook the line to hook up the pump. And thanks to gravity and vacuum and everything else, no pump is required. While that drains, I think I'm going to look into some tanks. I've never really liked the tank that's in that thing, and it's getting kind of nasty inside from just sitting around. There's no fuel gauge in it. You're filling through the bed, so not exactly ideal, but we can live with that, and I don't like it. So I think I'm going to go check out Tanks Incorporated. I think they're out of Iowa, and see what they have to offer for a tank. And they have tanks that have returns. They have built-in fuel pumps, so we don't have to have an external fuel pump. And they got sending units built into them, and then you can get the sending unit you want if you've got Stuart Warner gauges or factory Ford gauges, or use GM gauges. So I think that's what I'm going to do, is see what I can find for a Tanks Incorporated tank. But for now, we're just going to throw some fresh fuel in this thing and test her out. I might have to go use the restroom first. Oh, of course I spilled some on the floor, so I get to smell that for the rest of this project, and probably the rest of my life. Now we got our hard plastic line in our GM style quick connect, and a line coming from there, so we're just gonna have a rubber hose to the pump. I still got our mounting holes in the side of the frame, and we'll just hook that up. And then we gotta do a little bit of wiring, and we should have a fuel system. The return is already in place. It dumps in the top of the tank like so. All right, now it's time to put this fuel pump up there, mount her up there. It's got these mounting straps on there, and that's how I mounted it before, but I use self-tappers, and while I can really appreciate what Dalton does over there at Pole Barn, I think we can improve upon that. So we're gonna put some nut certs in there. I think that's what they're called. I don't know. Anyway, we got this Astro tool, because it seems like that's all I buy is Astro tools, but you got this guy, you got these threaded nut certs right here, so we gotta ream the hole out to that size, and we'll squeeze it in there with that bad boy, and then we just got some 1/4-inch bolts holding it in place. I don't like the self-tappers because they don't hold that well. They vibrate loose. They're not ideal, and you don't want your fuel pump just hanging there, dragging on the road when you're going up and down the road at 140 mile an hour, because LS things. So let's get after it. There you can see the holes that we had the self-tappers in, so we're gonna go ahead and ream those out to the correct size, and then we'll throw in some nut certs. Got to tighten up our hose clamps yet, and it looks like we're missing our little clip here for our fuel line. Also, it kind of runs through our C-notch, but I don't like the C-notch anyway. And this whole area is temporary, because like I said, I want to get a Tanks Incorporated tank with a fuel pump in it. We got to redo this notch. This spring pack is too thick, so on and so forth. So it's gooder than it was, but it'll be better yet. Stay tuned. Now I gotta go find one of them little clip insert dealios.
Where the heck did that go? Alrighty, we spilled a couple gallons of fuel, but there's a couple in there. We got our fuel pump in place. Got to wire it up yet. We need to run a relay run by the computer for that, but everything's pretty much done on the plumbing side anyway for now. So the next thing on the list, this is something I've been dreading. I think this is probably one of the reasons that I kind of gave up on this project. This steering. You got to have your steering supported up at the dash, and then you got to have it supported at the firewall or somewhere down lower, like early cars like say a 55 Chevy or this thing when it was new, or Reggie when it was new. It's a solid shaft going straight from the steering wheel all the way down to the steering sector, the steering box, and so it's supported down there. You can't just have it willy-nilly flopping from the dash. And so you can see we got this big gaping hole that I need to fill. So that's the first thing we got to do, is we got to fill that hole and then drill a new hole when the steering column comes through. And to get the steering column out, I got to unhook all of that shift linkage that I worked so hard to build. Let me show you the temporary bracket that I got on. I have no idea where this bracket come from. It's not good. It's terrible. Anyway, you can do a lot of different things. You can, put some angle iron or whatever, just something that goes around above the column, and then put a hose clamp around it. Or there's a lot of things you can do. I've always wanted to try one of these swivel deals. They're kind of expensive, but I like them because they fit the diameter of the column, and then they fit the angle of the firewall. So I'll let you know how it works out. You can see what we got going on here. We got a gaping hole where the clutch pedal was and the brake pedal still is, so we got to fill that. But before we do that, let's do the firewall, and you can see that terrible bracket. It's a piece of angle iron that bolts through this clamp. That's another thing you can use. You can use like an exhaust clamp to mount them as well, but you definitely don't want that coming loose. You don't cheap out on the steering and the brakes. And if you were curious what I had up front, it's this nice little billet angled column drop. They make different heights, you can drop it down further, but this one seems to fit what I need, and it kind of has the look. I don't like the look, but it's got the cheesy billet aluminum look if you're going for that. So anyway, we're going to take all this stuff out of there. We're going to fill that hole. Hopefully we can mark where it goes beforehand, get it drilled in the right spot, and then get it set back in there. And we're going to do slightly better than a DD Speed Shop hack job on this firewall. This firewall is absolutely terrible. This is like DD Speed Shop-esque. We got holes down there, and we got holes up there. We got holes everywhere. We got one up there, and one up there, and one down there. One over there where the wire harness originally would have went. One down there. And then the one for the steering column. And no, I'm not fixing any of those right now. That'll be long term. Once we get this thing on the road and working and running, then maybe we'll blow it all apart and fix those properly. Or maybe we'll just throw some HVAC tape over them or something. Who knows? Put some bottle caps. But anyway, we're not fixing those. But I do want to seal up the gaping hole for the steering column, and I do want to get that steering column mounted properly. So that's what we're going to do. I'll let you know when I get it out of there. Hopefully I can mark it where the hole goes, and we can mark all of our steering shift linkage and all that stuff so that it goes back together swimmingly. Yes, I've been dreading doing this, but let's just bang it out and get it done. Tear it off like a Band-Aid. Here we go, got the steering column out. I don't know why I was dreading that. It seriously took longer to find the Allen wrenches and the tools to get it out of there than it did to actually just get it out of there. But now's the fun part. We got to patch a hole, drill a hole, fabricate some things, do some things, and try to not make it look so terrible that somebody from which province even claims him? It used to be Manitoba, and now he's Oilberta. Yeah, Oilberta. He's up there with zip ties and bias plies. Him and Peg fabric cobbling stuff together. So the firewall comes down right here, and then that gets into the toe board. And we're only going to go to the firewall maybe a little bit further down, so it's got a lip so that we can attach a plate to for this, but we're not going to fill this hole just yet because I'm not entirely sure this is where I want my brake pedal. So we're just going to fill this hole first, and then like I said, maybe have a little lip to put something on there for that cover, because that's got to be removable. That's the other thing with this swivel socket thinger. It's removable, so you got to have your steering column removable. Serviceability, keep it in mind. That being said, it's arts and crafts time. Doing a little CAD, a little Coors aided drafting. I'm going to put this up over the hole, and we're going to trace it out, cut it out, and then transfer it to some type of sheet metal. And finding some sheet metal around here, that might be the hard part. We'll cut it out of the hood of a square body or something if we got to. Get some of our fancy magnets up there to hold her to the firewalls. Got our marks all. I'm gonna go to the inside, trace it all out. We should have ourselves a pretty good pattern. There we go. One nice pattern. Tech tip of the day, when you cut a hole out on something, cut it straight and not with a big jag in it like I did. I know I could straighten that out right now, but I'm too lazy. Maybe I'll make, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but don't have zigzags in your holes. Now we just gotta transfer that to some sheet metal. Well, we gotta find some sheet metal first. Well, if you guessed we were using a rolled over 95 Chevrolet extended cab door, you guessed right, huh, Duff? What are we? Oh yeah, that's the battery tray for a 71 Ford LTD wagon that nobody's bought yet. Still $2,500. And we got the charging system working. Voltage regulator fixed that. What else did we fix? Something, oh, I switched it back to points. The Durspark box was bad, I think. And because the goo came out, switch it back to points, starts better than it ever did. So yeah, hit us up. $2,500. Bring some cash. Come get it. Drive it home. All right, enough ranting about 71 Ford Country Squire wagons. We got a 49 Ford chop top with an LS to fix. I learned, don't trace it out on that door bar. So let's move her ahead, right about there. You wanna grab that for me, pal? Alright, there's what we're working with. Got her all cleaned up. I think we're gonna trim her up maybe just a little bit and burn it in place. And we'll be ready to grind her down just a little bit and drill a hole. I still have no idea why I was dreading this so much. It'll be so great once it's done, and then we can mount up a gas pedal in here on our way to driving this thing in no time. Oh, better vacuum out these seats, I guess. Time to grab the old Miller 140 and burn her in. There you go, boys and girls. I think that'll do. Good enough to drill a hole and hold the base of a steering column anyway. So now I gotta go find my hole saw and hopefully mark it in the right spot so we don't have to cut it out and do it again. Here we go, my least favorite part, drilling a 3-inch hole in the plate that I just put in there. Hopefully we get it in the right spot. Hopefully we got the bit tight. Chuck. Make sure Chuck is tight.
Like who, Chuck Norris?
Chuck must have been a heck of a guy for him to name such an important part of the drill after him. Here we go. Charles. There we go, now we just gotta deburr the hole and we're ready to slide the column back in there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Still no idea why I put this off so long. All right, that wasn't too bad. I had to get Chin to help me hold some hardware to clamp it all in place. Speaking of hardware, the hardware with this kit is absolute garbage. It's like some M4 countersunk Allen-headed, anyway, Allen bolts with that tiny of head on them. The hex, they like to round off and running it through the firewall. I don't know if we stripped it out or galled them up or whatever, but I gotta find some different hardware. 1 out of the 3 we got to snug up. The other 2, they're gonna snap off or something bad's gonna happen. But other than the hardware, not too bad. I like it. It seals up a lot better than having to, you know, put a rubber seal around it. So pretty decent piece. I don't know what you call it. And this isn't a good one. I don't know that there's better ones. Maybe the good ones from like I Did It have better hardware. I don't know. That's the only thing that I think could be improved upon. So there you can see the finished product. Professionals would probably put the hardware in from this direction so it looks smooth, but we got an LS, so it's ugly underneath the hood. So I'm not going to show this thing off. So I chose to put it in the other way. So when I look down at my gorgeous feet, I see some nice flush mounted hardware, but you could see, couldn't get it to snug up, so it's not sealed up tight here. But I'll get some American hardware, some, I don't know, 832s or maybe some 1032s and thread through there and snug it up, and then we should be good to go. There's a little set screw right here. You can clamp it on the column so the column doesn't slide up and down, but we got our shift linkage, all that stuff hooked up. It's pretty much done other than the hardware. I'll give you a little peek at what it looks like from the inside. Pretty much the same deal on the inside. The hardware just looks a little bit cleaner. So you can see that countersunk Allen head there. Yeah, not too bad of a piece. And now our steering column is super rigid and ready to go.
Since we got our column where it needs to be, next thing I'm going to do is mount up our gas pedal, and I'm guessing we're going to have to do some modifications because these pedals stick out a long ways from the floor from a GMT 800. So this is drive-by-wire, so 03 to 07, 99 to 02 LS swaps would be drive-by-cable. They both have their benefits. The nice part about drive-by-wire is you don't have to have a throttle cable. It's all done by wire, obviously, so you don't have to get the right length wire. The bad news is if you get a code, it'll put you in limp mode, where I don't think it ever does that in a drive-by cable. I've never had that problem. The other problem is with the drive-by wire, you're kind of married to this pedal, or else you got to buy a fancy pedal. But the super nice part about drive-by wire is you get cruise control super easy. Pretty much all you got to do is put a switch on the dash and boom, you got cruise control, where it's a lot more work with drive-by cable.
Anyway, here is the gas pedal. It ain't a bad looking gas pedal. I can live with that. But the distance from here to said gas pedal is astronomical. It's like we have an entire zip code for this thing, so we might be shortening that up. So let's get it mounted where it's got to be mounted, and then we'll have to do some modifications. You can see it's got its own spring mounting mechanism and everything in there. Also, it can only go that far up to the firewall to bottom out, so we'll just get it mounted to the firewall, and then we'll adjust the distance between there and there to get it the way that we want it. Also, the longer the pedal is from that point to that point, the least responsive it's going to be, and the shorter it is, the more responsive it's going to be, the touchier it's going to be, because, you know, leverage things. So keep that in mind. If you're messing with this geometry a bunch, it's going to change a bit. But it should drive just like an 03 to 06 Chevy pickup with the geometry if you keep it super close to the same that it is now. But we might have to do a little modification because I think it's going to be sitting up into my knees if we keep that length. Also, here's the wiring for it. So we got to drill a hole in the firewall, get out the hole saw kit again, and we got this grommet to go through there.
Let me show you what it hooks up to.
Hooks up to this guy right here. So usually you just mount those to the firewall about where our Loper Performance decal is, and then you hook your wire up to it. Bada bing, bada boom, you got throttle. Alright, that actually laid out pretty well. You can see they kind of match. I don't know. One's round, one's rectangular. They got lines in them, either way. And also, I think the brake pedal is too high and it's too far to the right. They're pretty close to each other right now. But I don't want to bend the gas pedal over here just to find out later on that I bend the brake pedal over that way. And now they're a mile apart. So anyway, it's just held on with a self-tapper for now. I am going to angle it a little bit over to the right here just so that when you mash the brake you don't actually hit the gas, because they're pretty tight. You can get one finger in between them. So that'll work for now.
So I don't want to get too crazy modifying them because it's just got an S10 seat in it. It's like a 60-40 bucket bench split dealio. And I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. And it sits kind of low. So I want it to sit up higher. But I don't want to spend much time mounting that seat and then not keeping it in there. So we can always modify the brake pedal and the seat and all that stuff later. The steering pretty much is where it's got to be. So like I said, I think I'm going to angle that pedal over, maybe heat it with a torch or do some pie cutting. And then I got to figure out how to mount that thing. I don't want to put riv nuts so that they're sticking through the firewall, and I don't want self-tappers. So I don't know if we're just going to put bolts in there or how we should do that. Bolt and a nut. We could put a bolt on the backside and weld it so it's kind of like a stud. We could weld the nut to the pedal so that you just tighten it from the one side. I don't know what to do yet there. Anyway, it's in there. It's pretty close to where I want it, so modify it a little bit. And then that part will be done. We just got to fish a wire through the firewall. And we should mount that throttle control box thinger, forget what it's called, and hook it up. The TAC module, that's what it's called. The TAC, throttle actuator controller. Throttle action controller? I don't know. TAC module, that's what it's called. Oh, how I do love the rivet machine. I decided to go with the riv nuts and then put them right on my gas pedal. It's going to be a pain getting the hardware through. It's going to be a two-person job. One person inside holding it, one person putting the hardware in, but it'll be a lot
cleaner than having a bunch of garbage on the firewall. And I got her tweaked over. I think it bent right about in there, or maybe right about in there. Now I gotta pie cut it and then get her to bring her down just a little bit. And now we're gonna throw her back in there.
Probably not tonight, because I don't got any help left around here. And like I said, it's gonna be a 2-person job. Well, we could probably figure it out. Use a scratch owl or a stud or something. But anyway, we're gonna modify this just a little bit more, and then I think we're gonna call her a day. It's 6/9 day. It's June 9th, and I happen to have a 69 Camaro that needs to be driven, so we're gonna go get some ice cream. Duff loves the ice cream. Duff loves rides, and I love ice creams. So here's what I did. Here's what I did to get the pedal closer to the floor so it doesn't sit up quite so high. I just took and made a couple of cuts through there. Well, I made one cut just about all the way through there, squeezed it together, tested it out, and then I made another cut because it wasn't quite low enough. And then I just put a little tack weld there for now so that that can't spread apart, and it's not going to bend there because I'm going to tweak it over just a little bit more, and then we'll throw it in there and try it out, and then at some point, hopefully I remember to weld that back up. But odds are I'm not going to be mashing it hard enough to break that, and if I do, then that was my key to not do that. All right, pretty happy with that thing. All right, we're back out here today. I think we got to do some wiring. We got to get the fuse relay center mounted and a ECU plugged in and mounted, and the tack module mounted and wired in, and a battery. We got to find a location for that thing and get that wired in, and then wire up some type of ignition, and we got to wire up the fuel pump. Yeah. We should have just got one of them Amazon wire harnesses stuff and tried her out. Oh yeah, and I played with the air intake a little bit. I don't love it, but we'll make it work. All right, here's the next wiring mess. We got our power and our ground for our battery. We can put longer cables on here and put the battery wherever, which is probably what we're gonna do. It's probably gonna go under the floor of the cab or in the bed because we don't have a lot of real estate up here. Originally they were mounted on the firewall. I don't know if I wanna do that. It's a lot of weight hanging on the firewall and it's in the way and it's clunky, but the nice part about that is it's easy to jump, so maybe we'll have to put some remote jumper posts. But anyway, this is the fuse relay center. It is a giant mess. The nice part about these is it's all factory, so you can diagnose it by using factory stuff instead of buying some aftermarket harness, and it was free as opposed to buying a $1,000 aftermarket harness or a $100 Amazon one that sucks. But anyway, yellow wire coming off of this connector. I think these are C1 and C2. Yellow wire coming off C1. This is a 03 to 07 drive-by cable. This one's for our starter. We got this red one here. We got to go to battery power. This pink one here is going to be our ignition source. So pretty much those are the only 2 wires we need to run this entire thing. I had to repin one wire that powers up the solenoids for the transmission, but other than that, hook that guy to our ignition and that guy to our starter, and this thing should run. Obviously there's other wiring in here for electric fans and for the fuel pump relay. We're gonna have to wire up a fuel pump relay, but other than that, that's pretty much all you need. And it was free. It's ugly, very ugly, and huge and bulky. And that's why we gotta put it right here along with our ECU, because this is what we got for a stock harness. Obviously, you can extend or shorten all these wires and do whatever you want. For now, I'm just gonna get it going. Maybe long term, I'll either modify this harness so that this goes in the cab and clean it all up a bit and get rid of this big, ugly fuse relay center. I think you can replace it with like 2 relays and 4 fuses if you do it upright. But for now, this is what we're doing. Also, I got this cute little couple of brackets off of the Amazonia to mount the computer. This is the first time I've ever mounted an ECU. They've all just been laying around flopping in all of my cars. And even when I buy cars that are LS swapped, they're usually like that. So, this should work. I wish they'd have came with longer hardware. It's always the hardware on these kits to go through there, but it should work. I think I'm going to mount it down here to the inner fender. It's ideal to have your connectors facing down so that water doesn't go in there. You don't want water ingression. These are sealed, but try to do everything you can to help it out. So screw that to the inner fender. We'll have to make some type of bracket for that. Then we just got to wire up a fuel pump and throw the battery in this thing, and hopefully she'll run again. Anyway, I'm going to mount an ECU to an inner fender. I'll show you what I'm working with. I do have a little bit of real estate down there. You don't want to plug it up too much because it's a lot of heat down there from the manifold, and also you want to be able to service your steering and shift linkage and front suspension.
case you haven't noticed, I decided the ECU needs to go in the Firewall. And yeah, it's hideous, but it's where I want it to be. And it is what it is. Now for this fuse relay panel. Anyway, usually they just drop in a couple of little tabs right there and then they click into place. So I'm gonna do a little arts and crafts and try to make a bracket that clips it in there and then maybe holds it from the bottom side. Maybe put a couple screws in those two holes. Yeah, wish me luck. A whole bunch of cutoff wheel work and using the Bailey bender and some rib nuts, we got this thing in place. The fuse relay center, that is. Don't look too bad, and it kind of cleans up that steering mess underneath there. Easy to get at. I don't love it, but we'll put a cover over it. Nobody will know. It'll be super easy to service. Same thing with the computer. We got to mount that little tack module, and I'm kind of out of real estate here. I wish I would have left a bracket hanging down off of this so that I could have mounted that right to that, but we'll find a spot, get some more rib nuts out. I love those things. But anyway, we're making progress, so I'm gonna mount that tack module up now, and then we're pretty much done with wiring, other than, okay, never mind. We're just getting started with the wiring, but once I get that mounted, we can find a way to route the wiring for the throttle pedal, and then we're ready to find a spot for our battery and figure out where we're gonna run our power and our ground, because obviously we're not gonna set the battery right here on the fender, and that's all the longer that our battery cables are right now. So we'll do that, and we're getting closer. That's what we gotta tell ourselves. One piece at a time, Johnny Cash style. All right, got the tack module mounted right below the ECU. Check this out, we got this bulkhead right here. I'm guessing that's where the wiring for the lights used to run through, and the engine wiring, ignition, charging, whatever. Let's take that out of there and see if we can't open that hole up a little bit and get this wiring for our electronic throttle wire shoved through there. Utilize one hole that's already there instead of drilling some more. Would you look at this? This thing was meant to be drive-by wire LS swap. The hole was the perfect size for the grommet that was on the Chevrolet truck. Like it was meant to be. Like a glove. Like a glove. Alright, cool. Now we just gotta hook it up on the other side. And a lot of this stuff is pretty much done. If we had an ignition switch, we could be cranking this thing and firing it up. Alright, sticking with the theme of using what we got, I took the harness that was for the taillights and the fuel pump and everything for the back of the 03 Chevrolet Silverado, and I trimmed out everything except for one wire, and that wire is for the fuel pump. So with a little assistance from the chin and a little diagnostics, we got it figured out that it's the gray wire going to the fuel pump. Anyway, got that connector hooked up to the bottom of our fuse relay center. Now I gotta route it to the back of the pickup. All that mess for one wire. That's your trailer lights, your tail lights. There's some ABS stuff in there. Anyway, need one gray wire out of there. But if I hook that up and I run a ground, we should have a fuel pump run to the key, and we should be using the original fuse and the relay and everything right over our fuse relay center. So if we ever got to diagnose it or we need parts at the parts store, it should all be off the shelf stuff. And I even labeled it for future reference. Fuelin' pumpin'. Duff is not impressed with the wiring. But the other nice part about this is now we have a relay that runs our fuel pump instead of just wiring up direct, which is an absolute no-no. But it should run for 2 seconds. It's running off of the ECU, so when you turn the key on, it'll run for 2 seconds, and then it stops. And once it sees the engine is running, it'll run consistently until you turn the engine off. So it's all controlled by the ECU instead of having some switch or hardwiring or whatever. People do silly things.
Fuel pump is wired up. Let's see if it runs. 2 seconds, shuts off. Perfect. So in theory, if the injectors aren't stuck from sitting like they were the last time from sitting, we should have fuel. We need to work on an air intake. We need to get it cranking over. And we had spark last time, we shut it off. So ran one parked. Let me show you what we're gonna do for an air intake. For now Prairie, there's nothing more permanent than temporary air intakes. Shout out to Whiskey Up, our battery sponsor this week. You too can be a battery sponsor at mortske.com. Look at this, we even taped it up last time we put her away. Fully intended on not working on it again for a long time. Maybe Mojo taped it up. He's responsible sometimes. So here's what we got. The dirtiest Spectre air filter known to man. This intake tube is off a Duramax. I got it on a big iron auction for like $1 with a bunch of other stuff. So we're not using that mass airflow sensor. We're using that one. We need to put a bunch of clamps on it, but I mocked it up the other night with a few sandwiches in me, and it seemed like it was gonna work. The one thing with mechanical fans is they get in the way of your air intake plumbing, so you got limited options. You don't wanna be pulling hot air from the engine bay, you wanna be ahead of the radiator, if it's possible, or pulling from the wheel well. Take a tip from the manufacturers. The big three, whoever at Toyota, Honda, whoever you want to say, they are pulling air from ahead of the radiator or from the wheel well. So just do what they do, but don't do what I do. Anyway, long story short, I would love to run this around the radiator and get it up front or the inner fender, but let's be honest, that'll never happen. We're not making big horsepower. It doesn't even run, so anyway, I need some hose clamps. You guys get the gist of it. It's gonna be something like that. It's gonna be terrible for now, but it can only get better. We gotta have that hooked up so we get our mass airflow sensor. Alrighty, here we go. Check out that sweet Duramax cold air intake. Yeah, it's terrible. At least we gotta make a bracket to hold it and support it, otherwise it's just gonna fall off. Bad things are gonna happen. Don't ask me how I know. Also, the crank wire to turn it over isn't working, so we got the old loser switch here. See if she lights off. Slingshot engage.
Slingshot engaged.
Come on, baby. Definitely got a couple stuck injectors. Maybe it'll come out of it though. Does have oil. We're slinging oil everywhere. What's that coming off of? The only thing that's got oil is the power steering. Where is that coming from? Oh! Tranny line's leaking. There's our leak coming from the passenger side transmission cooler line. Hopefully I just forgot to snug that up. Yep, definitely loose. I mean, are you really even mechanicking if you don't have a few leaks? Let's give her another whirl, see if we cleared up the leaks. We still got to put coolant in it, so we ain't gonna run it for too awful long, and we got to check the transmission fluid. The good news is the power steering was not leaking. The bad news is it does not run very well, but we do have some Chinese injectors, or we can try cleaning these ones. Those are probably a better option, cleaning these, than new replacement parts. But anyway, let's fire it up again, see what happens. Man, that was a lot of oil in not much time. Sure, I'm glad I don't have anything nice that's painted. Won't get rusty now though, right? All right, it's running, but it does have a miss, so let's wire up an OBD2 port so we can hook the scanner up to it and see which cylinder is misfiring, and then hopefully we know which injector to go after, and then we can either clean that injector or throw a new Chinese one in there. I'd rather find a used one and throw in there. Clean that one up, but all we gotta do is run one wire, I think it's called the serial port, to the OBD2 connector, and then a power and ground, key power, and then we should be able to wire up that, and then we can hook up our scanner to it, and then we'll also get coolant temp, and we'll get wheel speed, and all of that good stuff as well, so we can keep an eye on things. We still need to put coolant in it before we run it much longer, and then while we're wiring it up, we should wire up a light in the dash, the CEL, the check engine light, or the service engine soon light. That way we'll know if we got issues in the future. A light will come on and say, hook up the scanner and see what's wrong with it. But I'm gonna have a sandwich and celebrate getting this thing running again. I need to stop doing will it runs on my own projects, leaving them sit around for so long. All right, we're back. We're gonna pull the connectors off of the ECU. There's the blue connector and the green connector on here, and there's 4 pins that we're gonna go ahead and address. Or is there 5? Let me look at my notes. So on the blue connector, we got pin 33, which is purple. That's for the torque converter to lock up. So that's for your 4-pin brake switch. That tells the torque converter when to lock up, and it also kicks off your cruise control. Pin 58 is a green wire. That's for our OBD2. That's for our serial port. I think that goes to pin 2, and then we need a battery power or key power, and a ground for that serial port stuff on the OBD2 as well, but that's not coming from the ECU. And then on the green connector, we got pin 10, which is for a tack. We don't have a tack right now, but at some point we will have one, so we're gonna fish that wire out of there. And then pin 46 is for our check engine light. That is a brown-white wire. That wire is, I believe, a ground signal, so you're gonna have key power to one side of your check engine light, and the light won't light up until gets a ground from the ECU, and that is going to be our brown white wire. There's some other wires in there, like there's some wires that you can use to control electric fans, which we don't have at the moment, or we might not have in the future. There's a speed signal in there. There's a few other wires you might need, but anyway, we're going to fish those 4 out of the harness right now when we take it apart and run those into the cab for future reference. So yeah, easy stuff. Go to LT1 Swap for all the information on this and how to take these apart and where they're located, and all kinds of other useful information as well. A great tool for opening these connectors up and getting these pins out is your Screwed by Mortske repair screwdriver or your MojoCraft screwdriver. Magnetic screwdrivers available at mortske.com.
Alright, can you see where we got our wires fished through it? No, we're that good. Okay, it's right there. Put a grommet on the Firewall, used an existing hole so we didn't have to add any new ones, and plus it's pretty well hidden. That's why I didn't use that hole, because this one's better hidden, and maybe that ECU will be a deflector for the sound and the heat coming from our hopped up 5.3.
Anyway, now that the wires are in there, we're going to have to put a brake switch in there so that we get brake lights, and then also for our torque converter lock up, and we'll have to put a tack in there. And then what was the other 2 wires? Oh, vehicle speed signal and our OBD2 and our check engine light. So I found this here bulb. That's going to be our check engine light for now. It's going to be super bright. I got some cheapy Amazon ones for about 10 bucks coming, and that's what we'll use for that once we get to that point. And then I went out back in one of the parts rigs and stole a OBD2 connector, which you can also get on Amazonia for about 10 bucks. You can get them with a pigtail, kind of like this, and then you can also get them with a whole bunch of pins, and then you can pin it yourself. But anyway, what we got to do here is pin number 2 comes from the ECU. That's our serial port. Pins 4 and 5 need ground. For sure pin 5, but usually I just twist them together, and then 4 and 5 have ground. Some code readers need 4 and 5 to have ground. Most of them just need one of them. And then 16 is battery power, or key power, I guess, should work just fine. So here we go. Let's get this wired up and then figure out where our misfire's at.
Check this out. The OBD2 is reading.
We got a check engine light on. This thing's going to come on every time you turn the key on, and then once it's running, there's no codes. It'll go off. Obviously, this is all temporary. There's nothing more permanent than temporary LS swap wiring, but anyway, we can scan codes and we can see if we got a check engine light on.
Also, if you don't have a check engine light hooked up, it'll throw a code for not having a check engine light hooked up, so it checks that circuit, so you got to make sure you got a light in there. Anyway, let's get this thing running and see if we can diagnose which cylinder we got a misfire on and what other codes we got. I'm sure there's a few. I think if it's a misfire, it should be flashing.
Holy crap, we got no code.
Duff says that can't be right. It sounds like crap. No codes. Pending codes. No pending codes. Well, that's pretty neat. Maybe we just gotta put exhaust on it. We'll take it. No rides yet, though. Sorry.
Let me show you where we're at with the exhaust. I didn't film anything because not a lot of people have an exhaust bender or care to see exhaust stuff, but let me show you what I did. I'm super proud of my work. This is one of the first full exhausts we've done. We've done a few patches here and there, a tailpipe or something like that, but this will be pretty much from the downpipe to a tailpipe at some point if we ever finish it. We're gonna put our clamps on yet, but there's our downpipe. Got this guy coming back here. Bent it up to get that muffler as high as I could, and then did the same thing on this side, and of course that flange doesn't line up with the frame rail, so we had to put a little jog in there so everything's parallel with the world. But we got everything set up here. We got to do a clamp here and then a clamp up there, and then we'll do a hanger coming right off of this cross member. That's why I put the mufflers where the mufflers are, and I staggered it. This one I put the center inlet, and this one I put the offset inlet. But anyway, it'll hang from right there so that's supporting everything, and now we just got to do some type of tailpipe. That's the fun part, because it gets a little tight in there, and plus we got a brake line and fuel lines and a fuel pump, all the good stuff, and a bed floor to contend with. And this is why a lot of exhaust shops just dump them out right in front of the tires, and that's the hack way to go.
There we go. Got some exhaust tips on there, and those are not permanent. I got to make a roll pan or something. I got to have tail lights, and a roll pan is a good way to put tail lights in these pickups. Case in point, Reggie over there.
But anyway, we got exhaust on it. Now we got to do what every good exhaust guy does, is fire this baby up, see how she sounds. Seems like it runs way better when it doesn't sound like a grain truck. Topped off with coolant. We should probably change the oil in this thing, seeing as how it hasn't had the oil changed in, I don't know, 7, 8 years since we started this project. But we also got to get brakes, and in order to get brakes, we got to get access to the master cylinder. The master cylinder is underneath the floorboard, where it should be hidden. It's not very accessible or user friendly, but having it below the floor gives us a spot to mount our ECU to the firewall. So the master cylinder has been moved slightly. Now it's power vacuum assisted brakes, so now we got to cut a hole in the floor so that we can fill that thing up. So let's do that. There's the factory hole right there, but now it's right about in here, so we got to deal with that big old rib right there, so that should be fun. Also, we should probably get rid of that indoor outdoor carpet or whatever that is. So wish me luck. I wish it was a nice flat spot like that, then I could just take the hole saw there and tie the two together and have a nice oblong hole, making a cute little cover, but no, it's got to be where the rib is. Update, got the hole saw kit. We got some holes, so we got a nice radius there. We just got to tie them all together. And then we got access to our master cylinder. Tech tip of the day, don't hit your master cylinder with your hole saw, otherwise you got to fix a hole in your master cylinder cover. But anyway, now we'll use a combination of a jigsaw and cutoff wheel and anything else to tie all them together, and we'll have ourselves a way to fill that thing. Master cylinders don't need to be vented, so don't drill a hole in your master cylinder cover. Tech tip of the day. And there you have it, one master cylinder access hole. Now we get to fill it up with fluid and bleed it out and maybe weld that hole shut on that cover so that fluid doesn't leak out of there. Or not. It's got that rubber diaphragm seal in there. We should be fine. Alright, we got this thing running like a champ. Thanks to this, we went ahead and disconnected the coils or the spark plugs or the spark plug wires, whatever you want to call it, until we found out which cylinders weren't firing. Cylinders, that's plural. I thought we maybe had one that was sticking. No, 3, 5, 7, and 8 all had injectors that were hanging up. And the reason I knew there was injectors right away is because the last time this thing sat for a few years, we had a bunch of stuck injectors, so it took us a long time to figure that out. But anyway, I did that. I went through my stash and I grabbed some new Chinese injectors, got those stuck in there. We're gonna clean these up and save them on the shelf because I don't trust new parts anymore. So anyway, this thing runs way better than it did. Check this out. We got an ignition switch. Bada bing, bada boom. I think we're about ready to throw a seat back in there and do some burnouts. Cleaned out the bed. I want to scuff up them running boards and primer those. I should do a test fit before I do that, but anyway, yeah, we're gonna do a burnout. We're gonna attempt to anyway. When we were messing around with it, trying to get it run better,
the wheels were turning, so I know the transmission's working. I got to check fluids, do all that kind of good stuff. But at least we can kill it inside the cab. The throttle's way more responsive. We got brakes now. Steering's all hooked up. Good to go.
All right, so gonna do a fluid check on this thing and check the diff because we don't want to burn up our nice 9-inch. But check this out.
If you're familiar with the Ford 9-inch, there's a spot cast in right here, and that's usually where your fill plug is, and that's your fluid level as well. But this thing was never drilled and tapped for one. So the early 9-inches, this one's got a drain plug. How neat is that? But it should have a fill plug right here. The early center sections didn't have a fill plug. They had it back here. So I think I got an early center section in a later housing. So yeah, I'm guessing they filled it through the breather. So that's not very conducive. I think I'm gonna drill a hole, put a little pipe plug in there.
You gotta have a lubed up rear end.
So this is what I'm going to do. I got this reducer bushing, and we'll just weld that in there, and hopefully it doesn't warp too much. And then have a plug in there, and we can top her off. Just got to make sure we get it at the right level.
Also, when I was at Iola 2 years ago, I picked up these nice Bob Drake running boards. Not cheap. And I don't want these things getting any rustier, so I'm going to take some Scotch-Brite, scuff them down. And then I ran to the hardware store and got some Rust-Oleum 2X flat red primer. It doesn't even say red oxide. Ooh, also bonds to plastic. Anyway, we're going to scuff those up and get those on there so that they're not laying in the bed of the pickup and they're not getting rusty. And then hopefully they fit. For some reason, I got a sneaking suspicion that the wheelbase has been modified, and I'm leery that the running boards aren't going to fit because they go from fender to fender, but I don't know how they would have done that unless they changed the length of the bed, but who knows? This thing's been so molested over the years, for lack of better words. But anyway, we're getting down there. Getting ready to do burnouts. All right, so we just put a plug in there. It's an oxygen sensor, bung/plug. I like it because it's what I had, and it's the right size. Anyway, I put some Vaseline on there to try to catch everything, but the grease just melted. Anyway, I'm glad we did that because there's a lot of water and goo in here. I'm hoping that all the metal shavings are in the oil. And yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. It's a crappy old 9-inch. We don't know what gear ratio it is. We know it's an open. We don't know anything about it. It could have been junk before we started, but I'm really glad we did this because look at that. That stuff is terrible. Long story short, we didn't ruin anything good if we did end up ruining it by getting a bunch of metal shavings in there, because I'm sure somebody out there is like, nah, you got all the metal shavings in there. You just ruined that 9-inch. Yeah, we made it better. Let's be honest here. I kind of want to spray some brake cleaner in there so we can clean it out. That is terrible. Well, I'm glad we opened that up. That stuff did not look good and probably wouldn't have lasted very long. So hopefully we save some bearings this way. There's not much body and paint action here at Mortske Repair, but these running boards are in bare steel and they were not cheap, so we're gonna go ahead and Rust-Oleum them up. We gotta work on that clamp action on the Mix Quick. I still think that they miss an opportunity by not calling it Sir Mix-a-Lot. Baby got back. Pulls the can out. What is the deal? Whoa! Guess it's mixed.
Ding by the dun, ding by the dun.
All right, there we go. Let these babies dry overnight. I sure hope my red oxide primer matches. That's the beauty of the old red oxide primer paint job, is it's super easy to touch up. You just swing into your local hardware store and grab a can and you can touch it up on the road. So let's see if they fit and see if I can find some carriage bolt hardware and all that good stuff.
Look what we found on the shop floor this morning though.
I guess that's the beauty of not having any oil in the diff, is it doesn't leak. So now we need a pinion seal. Perfect.
Well, I do love the Ford 9-inch. The problem with these things is there's about 1,100 different pinion seals, and surely I have 40 of them on hand, and it's one of the other ones. So awesome. But anyway, oh my. Duff, we got somebody here from Minnesota to look at the 94. Oh man, check this out. I did not have enough 3/8 carriage head bolts, but I found some Allen screws, or button head cap screws. Anyway, they look way better, so put those on there. And I'm not gonna worry about trying to find the right 3/8 carriage bolts. Check this out. Oh, this pickup looks so much better than the wooden ones that were on there. I probably never showed you guys these, but these were the ones that were on there. I think they're made out of, what, a 2x10? And then they doubled them up around the edges here and coated it in bed liner. Yeah, Ford things. This thing looks way better. There is a little ding on each side on each one. They're not perfect, but good enough for the rest of this pickup. They fit up pretty well, but like I said, I was worried about the wheelbase thing, and here's the issue we got to deal with next. There's about an inch gap around the back, and we can't pull that fender that far ahead, so either the running board and the brackets need to come back. There's no adjustment on the brackets, so that's why I started there. Maybe we can loosen the bed bolts and get the bed to slide ahead an inch, which, in all reality, actuality, something-ality, personality, availability, whatever, would look better with the wheel opening. So that's what we're gonna try next. Also, there's this gap here, so I'd like it if the bed came down about an inch. So we could play with that stuff later. And I'm not even really worried about this gap back here. These fenders are pretty tight. I'm not worried about the fender being mounted. I'm worried about the gap, but the fenders are pretty rigid. The front I am a little bit more concerned about because they're pretty floppy, but the gap's a lot better up here. It's unfortunate that there's a pile of Bondo in here, so as soon as we bolt that in place, that's all gonna pop out of there, but it is what it is. I'm excited that they fit as well as they do, because I was really worried about maybe somebody'd stretch or shorten the frame, or it's got a different box on it, or who knows what. It even seems like it fits the contour of the fender pretty well up here. Same deal on this side. Instead of being about an inch gap, it's maybe 5/8 or 3/4 of an inch, so it's better on this side, on the passenger side. But now I'm gonna go ahead and loosen the bed bolt, see if we can't get that slid ahead. There's also a bolt that comes in from the back side this way, and then these go in that way. Same deal on the front fender. They come from the fender into the running boards. So we'll get those bolted up all the way around, and then try to adjust the bed. Do the best we can. Not a body guy. The gaps aren't going to be perfect. They were never perfect on these trucks. So that's if you're building one of these from scratch, you're probably going to have to do some pie cutting on your fenders and your running board and your cab and your mounts and all that stuff to get everything lined up just perfect, and then send it to paint and then reshim it and align it all over again. The joys of having nice things. I don't know. Don't have nice things, so we don't have those joys around here. Well, the front fit up pretty well on the other side. Not so much on this side. You can see how much filler is down there in the bottom of the old fender, so surely that's been reworked, and maybe that fender isn't built to Ford specifications. We may never know. On the back here, I thought we could just slide the bed ahead to meet the fender, but not enough room to slide ahead. I'm guessing when they welded this in here, this is not the original filler piece, the front bed panel. I'm guessing they got too far ahead. Who knows? But that's going to irritate me. But we're going to have to live with it, because I am not going to stretch the running board. The fender has to be where the fender is. You can see where they got all those bolt holes on the inside of the bed, so it's kind of got to be there. So when we get crazy and do a bed floor and a battery mounts and redo the fuel tank and the C-notch and all that, we'll have to cut this out, slide the bed sides ahead to meet up with that, and then we're going to bring it down lower. The reason this bed's all screwed up is because these are the stock cross members, and they're not attached to the frame. There's a gap down here, and they put these cross members in there, and they're in the wrong spot. So, it is what it is. I'm super excited to have those on there. They really tie the old truck together. So, that's done, out of the way.
They really tied the room together.
So I was doing a quick once over on the fluids, and so we got the radiator cap off, and I noticed a piece of fuzz in there earlier. I picked it out of there. So I picked out a couple more, and a couple more, and a couple more. I think the mice got into my radiator and made a house over the winter. Yeah, we got a mouse problem around here. I'm pretty sure that that is all seat cushion that's in my radiator in there. I don't know how we're going to get all that out of there. Not happy. It is what it is, I guess. Finish your project, kids, before the mice make a house out of it. Hopefully we got it all. Good thing LSs don't have cooling issues, because this one's gonna need all the help it can get. Tech tip of the day, don't leave your project sit so long that the mice go ahead and make a nest in your radiator. Also, keep your radiators capped off so that they aren't full of mice. Maybe these are Chinese mice and they made a house in there in China before it got shipped over here, so who knows. Anyway, check this out. Don't make dumb mistakes like me.
It definitely would have been easier to fish that out of there before I put coolant in there, but that is a pile of seat cushion or foam or mouse house, whatever. We got more room for coolant now, though. Great.
I hate the Mises to pieces.
I hate Mrs. to pieces.
Looky there, new pinion seal installed. It's a 7044 NA, same one as I use in my 1966 Ford Bronco that hasn't been driven in a year. But anyway, we got her in there. Hopefully that's just residual oil. The pinion looked good. It wasn't all grooved up, so hopefully that seals her up. The old parts shelf provides.
So in order to drive this thing on the street, we need a torque converter lockup, which runs off the brake switch, and we also need a brake switch so that we get some brake lights. Check this out. This switch, I believe, is off like a 47 to 53 Chevy pickup like Reggie. I just happen to have one on the shelf. It's a lever arm style. Works good on these style of vehicles with the brakes underneath the floor where you can't use the push pin switch. Let me show you what we got going on. I will have to run a relay for the TCC because that's a normally open versus normally closed, so we'll use that switch for both functions because it only has one function, not two, like one for, say, an 85 Monte Carlo.
So there it is. It's just got that lever that rides against the brake pedal, and as you push the brake pedal, the lever comes down, like so. And there's just two push-style pin connectors on the top, which I'm not really fond of, but that's what you get. But just two holes in the floor, you got her all mounted up.
Speaking of brake lights, we got to figure out something for brake lights. I don't know what to do on this thing. I do know that I think like a 49 to 51 Merc, one of those years, if they're not all the same, kind of fits the same contour as the fender. I have seen guys do that. But I do not have 49 to 51 Mercs laying in my taillight collection. Let me show you what I do have.
So I got some new 1950 Pontiacs from Speedway. I think I actually bought those for this pickup years ago. They're a nice looking light. Speedways actually do have a glass lens, so that's all brand new. I'm not sure what these things are. I picked them up at a swap meet years ago. 52 it says on there, so I don't know if they're like a 52 Buick, something like that. I do like that little stainless trim in the middle. I think these are about like a 50 Buick, and these are 60 Pontiac. So any of those I could put like a roll pan on the back. But I think just for now we're just going to put some metal back there just to hang a taillight, and we'll wire those up and call her good.
So comment down below. Do you want the 52 unknowns, the 50 Pontiac, 50 Buick, or the 60 Pontiac? What do you want to see on the back of this thing?
I think the 60 Pontiac are out just because they're so bulky. Would be kind of cool to have tail lights and brake lights have two separate lights. But we could do that with these guys too, but these ones there's just one bulb. They're kind of a pain to mount because you got to drill in the holes from the backside, and then we got to make a way to hold the bulb on these. Just you can't take the lens off from the outside, which is makes it for a seamless installation. You know, you don't have any screws on the outside, but I guess they're all like that. Yeah, screws going that way. That one looks like it's just those press-on studs, so that would probably be the easiest. This one you just thread on the nuts. But anyway, comment down below what you want to see, and if you know what those are off of, comment down below. I should figure it out one of these days, but I do have a full set, and then I actually got a spare bezel. I don't have a spare lens though. Somebody broke the lens on Reggie working on those lights.
I think it's a 47 to 48 Chevy car taillight. Speedway got them on hand, 60 bucks, glass lenses.
He even picked it up thinking he was going to glue it back together. Yeah, there's no glue in that. Whoops.
So I'm gonna get to mounting some temporary taillights because there's nothing more permanent than temporary taillights. So I bought a Model 8 truck, 2829. It had a hand crank dump bed on it. But anyway, I picked up this John Deere guard off like an 8820 or 9600 combine at that time, and I always meant to make a roll pan out of this pickup. And just this week, we made a battery bracket for Reggie out of it. So let's cut this up and finally make a roll pan out of this. It's way too heavy, but it's what we got, and it's pretty close to the right shape and dimensions. So I'm gonna do a little measuring and some marking and some bending and some cutting and have a roll pan. I don't even know if it's called a roll pan because we ain't rolling. put your fingers in there when that snaps on. We got a 51-inch bed and we got a 57-inch piece, so we are at capacity. Let's see how this goes. Is it gonna hold it? Nope. I think we're gonna flip it around the other way, see what happens. This might be a little bit thick for the old Bailey. Try number 2. Why is it not happy? Ah, it's too thick. Let's get them over here. It's not. I tell you what, really butchered this one up. Well, not really. It was a piece of scrap iron we had laying around. The brake wasn't wide enough. The brake isn't heavy enough. The brake operators are not qualified brake operators. So let me show you what happened here. It's not that bad. Everything was going good all through here. And then we didn't have the die on there, and so it kind of mangled that up. But this wasn't wide enough anyway. You can see there's about a 4-inch gap on either side. So what I'm gonna do is cut it off flush here, and then we'll cut it off flush here, and then we'll just do the same thing over again and bend another one up because it's not going to be wide enough, and then we'll just have to put a seam in it somewhere. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Long story short, if you got the right equipment and the right operators, you don't screw things up, but we don't have either of the above. The Bailey magnetic brake is a pretty good piece of equipment, but this is too wide and it's a bit too thick for that width. If we were just doing like a 2-foot chunk, it'd be fine, but this is a bit much. So I'm gonna do the same thing over again, bend another one, and hopefully not screw it up, and then we'll seam it up and we'll be good to go. Because I was just gonna cut this off and throw it in there and call it good and make it a temporary roll pan, but we know there's nothing more permanent than a temporary roll pan. So all right, just due to simplicity, we're going with the 50 Pontiacs here because we only got to drill 2 holes to mount it. Easy to mount. They're new. They got gaskets, so we don't have to figure out how to get sockets into all these. And then for, like, say this light, you got to trim out this entire perimeter here. You got to get it close, and then we got no seal. Whatever. This whole setup is it's going to be temporary. So here's what we got going on. I got 2 holes there. I got to drill to mount it. I put it right here, so hopefully the light. That's the hole we got to drill out, so the light's bigger than that. Hopefully the light covers up my seam here, and then we'll either have to drill a hole up here to mount it to the frame. I think we can mount it to the bed back here, but that'll clean her up pretty good. So get her mounted there and or there, weld that seam up, clean it up, drill 2 holes there, 1 there. We should drill a couple holes for our license plate, and then we'll be back in action. So there you go, custom roll pan stuff. Oh yeah, we gotta paint it red oxide primer. Shoot, forgot to grab a can of that when I was in town. Well, it's a good day for a roadster ride, so I guess we'll have to go get another can of red oxide primer in town in the old roadster. All right, here it is, final product in the paint booth here, drying. Never mind the overspray on the rattle can roadster runabout fetcher upper of the rattle can machine. Yeah, she's dry. Stick her on there, do a little wire in for some lights. Oh, that's what I can do while she's drying. Fish some wiring for brake lights. Getting closer. Real close. Alright, check this out. Air intake is mounted. I had this piece of flat that was bent, so I don't know. Anyway, something I had laying around. It's rusty and crappy. And then I welded some more flat strap to it so I could clamp it. And she's solid. I used, this is the factory piece that bolts on there. And it clips that big ugly plastic cover in place. Anyway, use that for a pattern. Drilled those out. Put a couple of these metric bolts in there that were holding it down from the factory. She's good to go. Yeah. I mean, it ain't super pretty, but it's super rigid. You can't even see it from this side. Good to go. Got a new air filter on order. That thing is disgusting, but yeah, I think it'll work.
I don't love it, but there's worse ones out there, that's for sure. Definitely gonna hurt the horsepower pulling all that hot air, but at least we only got a couple of 90s in there and a 45. The more bends you got, the more horsepower it robs. So I guess we're all about the horsepowers around here. Anyway, that piece of the puzzle is done as well. Check that out. We got brake lights even. What a deal. Pipes even lined up okay. They stick out a bit far, so we'll have to trim those off. I don't know. I don't hate it. Anyway, we need a license plate yet, and we need to wire up tail lights, but we got brake lights, so we're good to drive during the day. All right, I think it's time for a celebratory sandwich tonight. Shut her down, and I think tomorrow I'm gonna get somebody to help me throw a hood on it, and we're gonna take this thing outside under its own power and see what breaks. So something will break. That's what happens around here. We break things. Stick to what you're good at. So I got everything done that I think needs to be done in order to take it for a test drive. Chin is busy packing up orders because the giveaway is over on the old slob, so you guys missed out on that if you didn't get entered. But anyway, he's packing orders. DB's mowing grass. Mojo, bless his heart, went home sick this morning. He wasn't feeling very well, so I said, you go home, take care of yourself. We need you around here because we all know Mojo runs this show. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and try to back this thing out. One thing I did notice when it was on the lift, when I put it in gear, it seemed like it would want to rev up. So I don't know what the deal is there. But anyway, we're gonna put it in gear and see what happens. Right, Duff? Duff got a bath from TV this morning, so instead of smelling like a stinky skunk dog, now you just smell like stinky wet dog. Having fun packing orders, are you?
I was trying to make a video.
Trying to make a video of packing orders?
No, I
Wow, that's gonna be some riveting content. We can't wait to see that.
label.
Wow.
Label.
Yeah, if we want to stick a hood on. Hold on, let me test it first.
Okay.
That is one thing that I don't want to put the hood on because these hoods don't open real high and they're narrow and it's dark and it's hard to work on things. So I'm not looking forward to working underneath the hood once it's on. So I kind of wanted to get everything worked out. But I'm also sick of this hood being in the middle of the shop floor. So that'll be handy, getting it out of the way.
Brakes were good.
Yeah, it's low where I can rest my chin on this door. It's all right. We're gonna have bugs to work out. These hood hinges are miserable. It's like 1/4 inch fine thread, little tiny bolts. You're supposed to wire them all together so they don't come loose. It's not good. Not fun. The beautiful part about these is there's like 0 adjustment, so kind of get what you get. And what you get is a hood that doesn't fit for crap or latch. Definitely don't see what's wrong. Just continue to slam it. Here. Yeah. Well, I think we should go enjoy some cold adult beverages and let DB wash this in the humidity that's we're experiencing today. Cue sexy pressure washing.
DB not included.
Jiggle the handle.
There we go, first bath in 2.5 years. Chin says it looks better dusty than it does wet, and I tend to agree, but hopefully when it dries off it'll get nice and dull again because it looks like a shiny, fresh turd now, and you cannot polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter. Right, Duff?
we're gonna take this thing for a test drive. Did notice that the brake lights are staying on, so I'm gonna do a little work on the switch. There's not really much adjustment built into those, so we'll have to put some spacers on there, or bend the arm, or do something. But anyway, can't have our brake lights staying on. Other than that, it didn't do a great burnout, so I don't know if it's not running right, or we had to let it warm up, or it's because it's got crazy gears in it. Yeah, let's get her outside, dried off, and take her for a test run.
All right, here we go. First road trip. Need a new starter button. All right, we're gonna go put some gas in. Looks like we need a starter push button switch because that's not working. Also, we agree that the seat sits too low, but it is comfortable. And if I lift it up, I feel like the headrests are gonna be above the back window, and that is unacceptable to me. Yeah, seats definitely gotta go up. We were talking about that. I think we gotta put a 88 to 94 Chevy bench seat in it. That would be a good improvement. Live data says 170 degrees Fahrenheit. So I bought this thing in about 2014 or so. I transferred the title of my name in 2016, and I don't think I ever drove it on the road after that. So, first time going on the road in at least 9 years. Second, adjust my mirror for safety. Runs terrible. Why? Why is it running terrible? No check engine code. A lot of dust. As soon as I gas it, it falls on its face. Interesting. Maybe it'll come out of it. Maybe the other 5 injectors that are plugged up have an issue. Who knows? And we're holding up traffic. Brakes and steering weren't good though. Do a little diagnostics on the side of the road here. Don't know what I'm doing. 167 degrees, so it's not running hot. Also, it's not running cold. Yeah, it doesn't even want to rev up. Maybe it just wants the hood taken off. Let's see if we got any codes we can clear. Stored codes, reading codes. No codes stored. Why? Why wouldn't there be a code? This thing is running terribly. Maybe if we turn it off, turn it back on again. Better, but still not great. Let's try her again. That explains why I wouldn't do a burnout when we tried leaving the shop. You don't suppose it's that plugged up air filter? I don't know. Turn it off, turn it back on. It's a lot better, but still not what it should be for an LS. Yeah, as soon as I goose it, it falls on its face. So the OBD2 has a speedo reading, and it says we're doing about 56, but according to my GPS, we're doing 63. So the old speedo is about 7 off. So that needs to be redone in the tune so that we get our shift points all correct. We got a few miles in, staying at 160, so I can live with that. What I can't live with is all the crap blowing around in my eyeballs, Duff. Ride's pretty good for a whole fat stack of leaf springs on the back and no shocks at all. Maybe it's the flex and the frame on that terrible C-notch that's making it ride so great.
All right, running super poopy again. Even worse than before. It's like it's shutting off the injectors. You can hear all the air going in. If I only knew what all this stuff, load percentage, nah, that shouldn't matter. Short-term fuel percentage, shouldn't we be getting readouts there? Is our oxygen sensors not doing oxygen sensing things? Throttle position percent. Gets up to about 27 and drops out. All right, we're gonna turn it off, turn it back on again. Try that again. All right, let's see if we can make it back to the shop. We got to do a little inspecting, figure out what the heck changed from when we had it on the lift till now. Oofta, that not having a plug in the firewall throws a little heat back here.
Well, that's not exhaust, that's tire smoke. We dispensed them both, unfortunately. One was on the floor drain, and one's over here, but we took the air filter out. We took the old restrictor blade off the primered Dragon.
Took the restrictor plate off, give the red Dragon a little more juice. Yeah.
So let's go grab that other air filter that's...
That one's pretty nasty. Like,
God, we got another short one like that we can stick on. I think it's terrible. I don't know where it came from, but
I'm just gonna make
we should
sure
probably...
it's in the garbage.
Yeah,
I'll keep
let's...
this thing.
Yeah, keep that. And we could wash it with one of those kits. No. Uh-oh. We've reached the temperature where Duff has zero interest in the antifreeze. All right, let's go see what we can find.
All right, here we go. Try number 2. We'll see if we can slide the corner in the yard. That'll tell us, because it would not spin a tire on gravel before. Still not great, but better. Lots better. I'm just used to 1,000 rear wheel horsepower like all the LS's. Shift. There we go. Still not it. There we go, we're really losing power now. Great. Will we make it back? Worst, it's ran all day, still no check engine light. Come on, baby, couple miles to go. Uh-oh. Now we're getting some popping and banging. Things are not going well. Did we blow our nice new mufflers out? The more you press into the throttle, the slower it goes. Not going well, Duff. Oh, it's a gorgeous day to be broke down though, huh, buddy? We did just put new oxygen sensors in it. Are those bad? Surely with all the popping and farting and banging, we gotta have a code now, right? No codes. How is this thing backfiring through the exhaust with no codes? It won't rev up at all now. A little bit. Now why is it revving up? I don't know. So weird. Not good. What can we try next?
All right, I think I figured it out, and I also figured out the really annoying noise around here.
Want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
It's DB Vila.
DB not included.
It's D. Borland.
Yeah! You know who Al Borland is?
No.
Oh my God.
Oh, you never watch Home Improvement? You don't love JTT, Jonathan Taylor Thomas?
I think I've seen clips of it, but I never watched it. No.
Wilson? Not Wilson! The guy behind the fence. Anyway,
No.
DB's routering out some. That is almost round. Wow.
It's pretty close.
Wow. Okay. Anyway, carry on at a quiet pace. Well, we're up to temp, clearly.
So on my scanner, you can read the live data, and I check the data for the oxygen sensors because that'll kind of tell you what's going on. So you got 2 sensors on each bank on a regular LS, but since we got the non-emissions LS, because it's a pre-1950, we only got sensor 1 on each side. Sensor 2 would have been behind the catalytic converter, and those have been deleted on the ECU. But anyway, I was not getting a reading for bank 2 sensor 1, but I was getting a reading for bank 1 sensor 2. So somehow I got the connector for bank 1 sensor 2, which should have been deleted, but I didn't, hooked up to the oxygen sensor on bank 2 sensor 1. So instead of finding out where that connector is at, I just pulled the connector out of the ECU, pin 66 and pin 68 on the blue connector, flopped them around, bada bing, bada boom. So it was adding all kinds of fuel to bank 2 to try to get that oxygen level to where it needed to be, and that's why I was running poopy. That's my final answer. So let's go try it again. It's so hot out. All right, I just want to rip it because LS swaps are great.
It sounds cool.
All right. Yeah, our long-term and our short-term fuel trims were at 0, and you want those to be at something. Here we go. Now, I bet it'll spin a tire. So the reason that it would run good right away is because it was in what? Open loop? And it just does what it needs to do. And then it adjusts it for it later on in closed loop. I get the 2 mixed up, but anyway, that's why it ran good right away. And when we were just revving it up. But then once you got some heat into it, bad things. Look away, DB! It's already running better. It'll spin the tires, which it wouldn't do before. Oh, we need Dakota Digital and Vintage Air. Here we go, Duff. Just kidding, still not running great. Come on, baby. Maybe it's gonna take a while to clear up. Because clearly there's a lot of fuel in places that didn't expect to have all this fuel. Oh yeah, way better now. Oh, it's 82, we're not doing 82. It's in kilometers per hour. There we go, 53, way better. Let's just try to drive it normal for a while instead of beating on it. See if it runs any better. We could have loaded up that oxygen sensor from all the fuel we dumped in there, so might have to burn that out or maybe even replace it. Oh, this thing's got a firewall vent. That's like AC. Woo! Running like crap again. Pulls a little left when you hit the brakes. Yeah, our O2s are doing O2 things for sensor 1 on bank 1 and bank 2, so I don't know what's going on there. That should be good. Seems to be running okay now. I don't know why it's pulling. It's got new rotors, new calipers, new pads, new hoses, new lines, new master cylinder. Everything's new on the brake side. Yeah, it pulls to the left and you hit the brakes. What's that all about, Duff? So we could have some spark plugs that are fouled out because it was throwing fuel at it, trying to figure out what's going on. So might be a problem as well, something to address maybe. And we still could have some bad injectors for all we know too.
Still don't like accelerating. I still can't believe all the issues we've had with this thing, and we have 0 check engine codes. We're popping and banging and farting. We didn't even have oxygen sensors plugged in for that first couple test drives, and we had no oxygen sensor codes. So we were talking about that. If you get an oxygen sensor code and you're gonna go trade a car in, just unplug it. The code will go away. Just kidding. Don't do that, and don't take any vehicle trade-in advice from me. All right, we made it home. Most successful drive yet. It's still not all the way dialed in, but it's a lot better than it was.
LS swaps are the best! What happened?
Made some noise.
We still got a drive shaft.
Something broke. Oh yeah, it lunged the spiders. Watch the diff. Watch the drive shaft. That's not good.
Broken in your toy.
This is why we can't have nice things.
I guess I could sit in the middle of the shop again.
Big finale.
Hey, does anybody know anybody at Quick Performance that can help us out? We're gonna need a center section. I guess it doesn't run that bad. Spider gears. It's always the spider gears. That's like the 3rd set since we moved to the farm.
Well, we got her all tore apart, didn't we, Duff? Let's show them what we found. Well, we found out it's got 300 gears, which is not a very good gear for a tall tire and an overdrive 4L60E transmission. But what's even worse than that is what we found inside.
I'm no dentist, but I don't think those teeth are supposed to be rolling around in there. It also sounds like Cletus McFarland's piggy bank in here. There's a few coins laying in there. So, spider gears have left the chat. The old cross pin is pretty hammered. The carrier is wasted.
Anyway, I'd like to find like some 350 or 370 range gears with the overdrive and the tall tires. That'd be great. But what do I have? The gears out of the old Snooch Rock. If you guys remember, we put a spool in that thing and then some crazy like 534 gears. But I saved the 300 open, so it should be pretty much a direct bolt in. The yoke is a little bit different, so hopefully we can swap those out. Unfortunately, we used up our last good 18 833 or 70 44 and a pinion seal, so we can't put that into that thing, but we can swap it out later if we got to. And it looks like it's got new axle shaft seals, and it did have oil in it. It wasn't very good looking. It was kind of milky, so I'm gonna take the old toilet brush cleaner with the long rod and clean out the axle tubes before we swap that one in there, and maybe pick around in there and see if I can't find any more debris inside before we put it back together. But there's our update. That's what happens when you do too many burnouts with an LS and a worn out old 9-inch. All right, catch you guys later. All right, folks, Duff says that's where we're gonna wrap it. We got this thing running and driving. We got a bunch of bugs to work out, but this thing will move under its own power. I've got Dakota Digital gauges on order from our buddies down at Rigid Customs. And they're 10 to 12 weeks out, so we'll get that in there. Need to relocate the battery to the back. Got to raise the seat up. We got to put a bed floor in it. We got all kinds of stuff. You guys saw the video. We got to put a harness in it and wire up the headlights and the ignition switch and a bunch of other things. But anyway, this thing runs and drives. It's on the road. This thing has never ran well. Back in the day, it had a 351 Cleveland in it, and it had a Volare front end. I put a Dodge Dakota front end in it. I need to fix the C-notch in the back. It runs way better now than it ever did with that 351 Cleveland in it, and that's why I took that out. And we still got some bugs to work out, but this thing is way more gooder, and it's going to be even better yet. So thank you very much for watching. Go check our other videos
Like, share, comment, subscribe. Go check out the merch. We got ball caps. We got some fresh dew coolers. We got magnetic screwdrivers, magnetic can koozies. We got some awesome banners. You name it, we got it. If we don't got it, you didn't need it. So, thank you very much for watching. Remember, it doesn't matter how you get it done, as long as you're having fun. LS's, real fun when they want to run. All right, on to the next one. Oh, is there dirt up in there? Yep.